Welcome to MasterControl's webinar, Harnessing AI to Transform Quality and Manufacturing in Life Sciences. Happy to have you here. Today, our speakers, we've got some great experts from MasterControl, Renee VonBergen, our Director of Product Management, over artificial intelligence and machine learning here at MasterControl, along with Erin Wright, our Vice President of QMS and Emerging Technologies at MasterControl. So we are excited to have them here to share their insight and expertise on AI specifically for life sciences. So let's take a quick look at our agenda for this webinar before we jump in. We will look at AI disruption overall in the market, how AI presents some really exciting opportunities for life sciences industries, and then take a look at some innovations that can really assist life sciences manufacturers to improve processes, see some really great efficiency gains, and a lot more. I do want to note before we jump in that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Feel free to post your questions in the chat throughout the webinar. But like I said, we will have a dedicated time at the end where we hope to get to as many questions as we can. And with that, I will pass it to Erin to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you everyone for joining us. As we look at the macroeconomics of AI and disruption in the market, there has just been an explosion of investment. In 2020, there was about $15 billion market cap for AI function, and which is more up to $90 billion in 2024. Every major contract manufacturer that we serve lists data-driven quality as a top 3 priority. And because that is moving so quickly from experiment to board decision, delaying any kind of action here becomes really costly for our customers. And so we really want to stay grounded with the message that this AI disruption is not coming. This AI disruption is here. And you have to figure out how it's going to affect you as working with regulators, the auditors, suppliers, how we share data. And the only open question right now is who's going to adopt it soon enough to see real benefit and value first. And so generative language and vision models have been common use since of 2022. In the last 2 years, they've reached 30 million weekly active users. I easily count for 5 of those. And so as we've been looking at this enterprise value of $340 billion, according to public market filings. For perspective, this is faster growth than you see with iPhone or even public clouds. And we know how quickly industry actually responded to the move to the cloud over the last 10 years. And the lesson that we're learning here is incredibly clear. The technology has moved from an experiment to a must-have within 2 years of our functions. And so as this has grown, as we are looking at new information, we have to ride this wave that is going through. You can't just wait for stability as we move forward because of how quickly this market is changing. Boston Consulting Group did a survey recently that 89% of its executives now list generative AI among the top 3 important strategic initiatives. However, only 40% of them expect to have measurable performance gains. So how do you have this huge gap between knowing this is a priority, knowing that there is value, and yet not being entirely sure how to measure it? And that gap there comes from those links to those business outcomes, data readiness, talent, and being able to harness the power that you see in measurable, actionable ways as it aligns to your business priorities. Our internal benchmarking that we did across 200 different manufacturers shows that 90% are still in the first maturity phase. They know this is real. They know that there is value, but being able to harness it, that capability gap is more of a symptom than a root cause about how looking to that performance measurements and the gaining the confidence of your executive team for this process. Where we find is that people leap at AI as an exciting new tool that can do all of these things without really defining the problems that they're trying to solve. And so as we talk with our customers, we really dig into the 3 questions about how are you funding these proof of concepts? Where are you investing your time and energy in adopting AI as part of your business model? And the first is, does it have an impact on critical metrics that you're trying to track? Are you trying to drive down deviations or scrap rates in your manufacturing process? Are you trying to improve your right first time batches, or even having a stronger golden batch ratio for your processes? When you're looking at technology, everything is a nail to a hammer. And so if you're not really starting with that really strong problem statement, you're not going to see that really strong value from this incredibly powerful tooling and technology stack. And we'll also look at, do you have the right data in the right fidelity to actually be able to reach reliable conclusions? Are we looking at predictive yield models for your batches? And are we measuring all those pieces of information? Do we have that information appropriately digitized and constructed and formatted in a way that we can drive meaningful insights and predictive analytics from that data? And then obviously, can the model output be acted on in your existing processes? Are you using the tooling that can take advantage of these new features and functionalities? Or is the tooling that you're using just putting a surface layer of the information, automating smaller, lower value functionality as part of the process? And so we see that about 6% of companies have done a really strong deep dive into upskilling their workers on AI.
Erin, one thing that's interesting about that stat, 6% of companies have upskilled workers on AI, is that that's maybe you can say top down on that. Interestingly, by 2030, approximately 1/3 of the workforce will be Gen Z, I believe it is. I forget my generations, but essentially there, right? Those folks are digital native. And they're fully expecting that AI will be there for them on the job. They certainly understand that AI is very assistive. They can't imagine doing, for instance, their schoolwork, for instance, without AI, right? It's not a cheap factor. It's nothing that anyone tries to hide. It simply is acknowledged as something that's very helpful. And so they're bringing their own AI tools to work. It's really important that companies get ahead of that, right? So they can keep control over what's happening and embrace the proper AI tooling. And so that's something that companies definitely want to keep a track of as well.
And that brings us to a really great next point, Renee, is that employees today aren't even waiting for company implementation of AI. Is that the 6% are seeing upskilling through their direct upskilling as a corporate level initiative. You see like the Shopify CEO memo that went viral recently, talking about everything must be an AI first. Every tooling needs to be brought in with AI as a centric. And that's really great for that 6%. For the rest of the organizations out there, we're finding, like you're saying, 3/4 of people are using generative AI in some function in an uncontrolled way. And that they are using either public chatbots, having personal accounts on ChatGPT, or putting customer data into these toolings to get results and feedback that they're looking for from their existing controlled tools that they just don't have the access to. And so the idea of being able to expose this information is incredibly risky for your organization. And what I hear from these stats, Renee, is people want to have AI in a safe and sane way as part of their overall job roles. They expect that there is going to be AI there as a tool to streamline things that are difficult. Figuring out the right phrasing or the wording isn't necessarily creating the risk or writing regulatory procedures for you, but helping you write it in the right tone.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, even within MasterControl, employees use certainly generative AI in a variety of ways, but we're ahead of the curve in that we're definitely aware of the risk associated with it and properly guardrail for that.
Absolutely. And even you see AWS leadership predicts that within 2 years, most developers will be working with agent and agent generated code and agent review code rather than writing out the code for each line. And we expect to see this shift across all departments. So right now you're focusing just on developers, not coding, and being able to get that review of the work that they're doing. But writing protocols, writing up deviations if given a bulleted point of things, bulleted points of items that we want it to cover. And it really shifts that role of those users from the sole creator to a curator or a reviewer, making sure that I am putting the right inputs in and that I'm getting the right outputs out that I expect. But instead of having to be the sole creation of all the information, be more the curator of that item. which brings a lot of anxiety if the work that you're really proud of and everything that you are working on is just the sole creation of information. It can brings a lot of anxiety to people, what that means for their roles and for their job security moving forward. So you see a third of workers can see half of their tasks be completely automated away through AI or streamlined or made less disruptive through AI function. And that can cause a lot of anxiety for the users out there. Because if half of your job is just automated away, do you have a job in the future? Is this, what does this look like for headcount? And so there's a lot of anxiety out there in the marketplace right now of people even afraid to admit that they're using AI for their written communication. And it's interesting because there's the pithy phrase that goes around is that your job will not be replaced by AI. Your job will be replaced by someone else who's using AI. And we expect to see this moving through throughout the trends is that AI is a tool to improve what you already have and less of a replacement for what you're doing. Because AI fundamentally can't think for itself. It has to be pointed into a direction. It has to be given prompts. And it is particularly in our incredibly regulated and high sensitivity or industry in which we work needs that human in the loop review for understanding what the work is and what they're actually the meaning behind the content as we moved into, which is a really great segue as we talk about how do we think about AI beyond just the generative text of ChatGPT, beyond the amazing recommenders in Amazon of all the great other things that I probably shouldn't be buying off of Amazon, of what this actually looks like in practice for life sciences companies. AI for life sciences represents $100 billion in market value. And being able to unlock that across all of our life sciences industries. And when we look at how that slices across the different departments, so much of that value has been focused in that commercial and R&D function. And that makes a lot of sense. I think the statistic is 0.07% of new molecules discovered actually make it into a commercially viable product on the shelves that goes through FDA approval. And so if we can churn through those functions and that R&D to find the new drug, the new component, the new compound that can make life-changing products available to more people, fantastic. And that's a really great place and makes sense to focus that R&D phase. But what gets criminally underserved is the post-market execution, is that in that 7 years, when you have that patent cliff of how quickly can we automate the manufacturing and the execution of that post-commercial offering. And when you actually make the return on the really strong investment that you have in your R&D phase, there's so much opportunity to provide value in the operations and the post-market execution for our life sciences organizations. Independent studies that we saw through the New Horizons Life Sciences show a really clear pattern that the more that you combine data-driven automation, the digitization process that MasterControl has been talking about for the last 20 years, with AI allows you to move product faster and waste less. In one of the case studies here, you saw biologic plants add continuous flow equipment and a lot of real-time data monitoring, and they saw their finished batches rise really significantly, that 35% increase in productivity, as well as a significant improvement, so a decrease in the time it took for strong, effective investigations into their quality events. So instead of spending days or hours going through those investigations, you're having those insights surface to you, and those patterns surface to you much sooner with this kind of assistive AI tooling. Allowing you to get that efficiency across multiple product lines, across multiple product life cycles. And so as we look at compliant, innovative AI for life sciences, we know that this is moving so quickly, and yet we cannot compromise on compliance and product quality and patient safety. Everything that we are doing as we are looking through our core products have to be viewed through the lens of how do we ensure that our patients are safe, we have high quality products, and that we're able to use, but still being able to innovate and take advantage of the new technology available to us. And so we really have to look at how do we balance this innovation and compliance. And we talked about this a little bit up front about making sure that every AI idea, every function that you are doing is designed to a critical quality metric. We're not just trying to push product out the door faster, but are we investigating deviations faster? Are we getting predictive analytics of an area of risk is about to be identified? Are we being aware that there's anomaly or drift in our data sets, that we're seeing generally higher rates of a failure in a certain piece of a machine that we may want to do and have a predictive recommendation of replacing that piece of equipment or recalibrating that equipment sooner than originally scheduled, and being able to surface those risks in that safe and compliant way as they go through the process. We really want to make sure that everything that you're doing is explainable and attributable to a human being, making sure that they have all the appropriate governance that you expect of 21 CFR Part 11 product to have as part of this AI function. And so every time you're looking at AI as part of your implementation, there's so much value and benefit in those efficiencies, but it must come at the same time as those compliance and the direct attributability and ALCOA requirements, and particularly looking at data privacy and security. I know that comes up a lot in conversations, which I know Renee will touch on much more as part of her conversation. And how do you measure the risk of implementing AI, and how do you mitigate the risks of poor AI recommendations should they happen? So one of my favorite things that Renee talks about, and Renee, I might put you on the spot here a bit, is the different types of help that we look for in AI as we go through. And the analogy that Renee uses that I just adore is thinking about AI on a spectrum of having that really smart intern, having that say, hey, really smart intern, here's a list of things I want you to do in the order I want you to do it in, and having them go to take care of that for you, versus having that chief of, which is a second pair of hands. It's just, here's the menial tasks. I think that you're a really smart intern. I think that you can go and manage these things under strict supervision with very clear instructions, compared to having a second brain, like having a chief of staff who is able to surface insights to you, saying, I'm noticing these trends across your CAPAs worldwide, particularly in the supplier. I'm noticing some anomalies within how our documents are being approved outside of our existing approval structure. And I'm noticing some anomalies in our audit trail, that some users are potentially doing something nefarious. I might want to recommend you review this in your audit trail as part of this process. And so having this spectrum of AI as that really smart intern and second pair of hands versus the chief of staff who is analyzing this information, synthesizing it, and providing recommendations for you to review and approve as that really highly capable chief of staff function, and everything in between.
Yeah, the great thing about this is that it's a full value spectrum, right? You don't have to choose one end or the other. You don't have to say, well, I want an intern or I want a chief of staff. It's like AI provides that assistance that ranges the full spectrum. So you get both.
Absolutely. And you can pick and choose which kinds of things you go through that smart intern versus what kinds of activities you want to give to your chief of staff based upon trust, based upon expertise, and risk to your overall organization.
Absolutely. And the important thing is that you're still in charge, right? To your point earlier about the intern or the chief of staff not replacing you, but in fact assisting you, and you're still approving everything that is recommended to you or presented to you as a draft or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. And it's through that lens that we look at these kinds of guardrails for AI for life sciences, that because we have that significant risk concerns, because we do have the compliance and the weight of patient safety on our shoulders, we have to put in the appropriate guardrails to make sure that we are providing value to both our customers and without introducing unnecessary risk. And so making sure that we have things built out on our own platform, having a really pragmatic approach for custom built LLMs for our custom built purposes, and looking at the low risk use cases. What are those smaller smart intern items that we can roll out first to gain experience from our customers and helping them feel comfortable with where bringing in extra smart interns as part of the process without the cost overhead. And as Renee said, that human in the loop is that is so crucial and key, to having a human making these types of decisions as they are applying their own critical thinking to the information that is provided as part of the AI features and functions.
Great, thanks, Erin. So I'm going to jump in here a little bit because this is in our wheelhouse related to the platform. So my team, the AI and all team, is actually responsible for building this agentic AI platform. So let me spend a second and just kind of describe what's happening here. Anytime an application, a master control application, is going to kind of flow through an architecture to produce something that comes about like a task, generate an exam or do a translation for me or predict something. This is going through typically a prompt, right, where you as a person are used to using maybe ChatGPT to create that prompt. That's something that we do for the application. It goes through an agent that decides which of the large language models or LLMs is best to accomplish that task. And then we do a lot of post-processing to make sure that the result that you end up seeing displayed to you, either as a recommendation or a draft or whatever that may be, is correct. So post-processing is important there. And all of that is in that one little rectangle that we call agentic AI platform. So a lot of our value is derived simply from that. Let me, Erin, if you don't mind clicking, I seem to have lost control here. Thank you. So let's talk about the real world, kind of the things that we're envisioning coming soon, as well as things that we've produced for you already. And maybe I do have control. We're gonna go back and forth a little bit here. Essentially, one of the things that we have from a problem statement, if I can go back, I'm not really sure. There we go. Sorry for the little snafus here, but in a webinar, sometimes that happens. So essentially, one of the things that we're currently in development on right now solves the problem where you have this process for managing deviations, potentially CAPAs. It requires a lot of resources and has challenges with that. And so as part of the solution, we have, right, and kind of invoking the second brain mentality here, something that will help you investigate what these deviations are about, what's happening with them, what kind of risks they're proposing, might be presenting, things that you might need to do, launch a CAPA, whatever you need to do to be able to resolve those issues more quickly. So we call this deviation AI. It may have a different name by the time it is presented to you as a formal product or feature within MasterControl. But we wanted to give you a sneak peek about what's happening with us right now. So these are mock-ups because this is, as I said, in development. But the idea here is that you can chat with your data. And in this case, it's chatting with your deviations. We start here with an example of hey, we're looking at deviations in the last month, and we're presenting those to you. If you've got follow-up questions, you can start with a chat, or you can drill down. One thing I want to call attention to is the bottom of this screen on the right side. You see a total deviation count and some categories, so critical deviations, temperature deviations, etc. Now, not everyone will have temperature-related deviations. What this is doing is actually the AI behind this is categorizing or grouping the existing deviations that are there so that it gives you a better idea of what you're looking at. And this would vary, of course, from customer to customer or even from month to month, depending on what it is that your deviations are covering for the time period you've suggested. So you can look at this, get a good idea about what's happening, and then, as I said, start asking questions about it. So how many of these deviations in the last month were related to temperature that exceeded the acceptable limits I have? And the AI, of course, responds with, okay, an updated table that says, well, you've got here, right? You can read 15 deviations related to that. And the conversation goes on. So here's my 15 deviations, 8 and 7. They're related to 2 different sites. And I'm saying, what's happening in these cases? And the AI can dig in further and say, well, one of the things that's different about this is that at 2 sites, you've got the introduction of a replacement part, and it happens to be from a particular vendor. So here I can see the illustration of exactly that story. And I can say, oh, interesting, tell me more about that. In this case, we're calling out that TempGuard, a fictitious company, is, for purposes of this demo, is potentially an issue. And 3 other sites are going to be given this particular replacement part. So you might want to jump in and check that out. And so that is an example of how you can interact and find out things that you might not have realized otherwise. Without seeing this, there was no thing, for instance, in any chart that you could have looked at off the bat that called out this potential risk. And it's not necessarily something that's going to come to pass, right? But something that's presented to you to look into to make sure that you feel comfortable with what's about to happen, or maybe want to dig in a little bit more and find out more about those replacement parts. Was that a planned deviation? Is this something that's a surprise, etc.? So that's what we call deviation AI. One of the things that we have as a solution today is something that addresses training. And a lot of the warning letters that the FDA sends out trend towards inadequate training procedures. And the tool that we have available now is called Exam Generator, and it makes it possible for you to confirm that your workforce is actually trained and has comprehension of your training materials, rather than just going through and saying, yep, read and understood, and check from there. So as I mentioned, this is called Exam Generator. It is available for you today. And this little loop of a video here is showing the middle of the process. So I have, as a user, uploaded the document from which the exam should be generated and have said, these are the sections that are important to generate questions for. This particular thing on the left side is part of that documentation. And the exam generator created a draft question number 1, that was related to that. The loop here that you just saw, right, is showing that if I really think that's an important area, for instance, this is definitions, and I don't want just one definition tested, the knowledge on that, I can generate another question from that. I'm not limited to the number of questions that I can have. This loop just is simply highlighting that particular piece. If I'm not satisfied with the question as a whole, I can regenerate it. Or as you can see over there on the right side, I can make small edits to the questions and then save that. That's valuable because the thing that I saved is something that can be exported and then imported into our training module.
I have to jump in and say this is my absolute favorite feature you have ever built. As a former quality manager myself, I remember the pain of trying to come up with what I thought were relevant exam questions. And I'm not a subject matter expert on pipette cleaning, but still, as I'm putting together our training materials and our training processes, it is hard to get time with the subject matter experts to create those exams. And so this is just one of my favorite things that you guys have built and I would have loved to have had this when I was a quality manager.
Thanks. Yeah, one of the things actually that we heard from beta testers was that, coming up with the exam questions, as you just said, is difficult, but perhaps even more difficult is coming up with the distractor questions, right? So let's jump to the next thing here. So that was Exam Generator. And in addition to that, we have 2 other tools that fall under that spectrum from task assistance to recommendation, and those are Translator and Summarizer. From a translator perspective, the reason that we introduced this tool is that the workforce that you may have may be fluent in a particular, we'll call it a corporate language that you embrace as a company, but they perhaps have a native language that they feel more proficient in or more comfortable with. And so you can translate documents to help them. Those might be something that would be more informal. You can also choose to say, we will translate into certain other languages, which might be particularly relevant, for instance, if you're in the EU, where multiple languages may be particularly important. So that is allowing you to translate your original documents into draft translations. You as a human then go and check that and then approve that. You can then, of course, have that as an attachment to your other documents. So let's take a look at that before we go into Summarizer. I'll show you a little demo of that. Here again is another loop demo. What's happening here is I've had a couple documents that I've uploaded. I can select up to 5. They don't have to be in any particular language. They have to be supported by us, of course. But I selected 2 languages to have those translated into. I can actually translate into up to 5 languages at a time. In this case, I'm seeing a document that was translated from English to German, and that's great. As I said, I can then, this is a draft, I can then send it out for review. Next, we'll talk about, sorry, that was Translator. Next, we'll talk about Summarizer. And Summarizer has 2 capabilities. What you're seeing here is taking one document and creating what we call a single summary, but it includes actually 3 different things. Keywords, which you're seeing there. I can decide that I like those keywords or not, get rid of them, add them, etc. A description, which is like a kind of a third-party observation about what that document is about. Could be very helpful for you to have that as metadata for search, for example. And then the summary is like a Cliff Notes version of kind of a distilled version about what's happening here. So that's a single document thing. As the demo here loops around again, we'll see that, and perhaps it won't. If you could replay that slide, Erin, that might be great. The thing that we'll see over on the left side, and forgive us as we play the demo a little bit while we talk. On the left side, you're going to take 2 documents that are similar, right? But one's a revision of the other. And so you're going to ask document summarizer here to take those 2 documents, summarize the changes, and list the changes. It happens fairly quickly, summarizing into summarize. I can download that, and then now we're caught up with the video here. You can see that some of the changes, I added an image, for example, made a couple text changes, etc. And I can take that. Some people have said that they actually then take that and port it back into their revision history to say what those changes were. And so those 3 products, Exam Generator, Document Translator, and Document Summarizer, are available for you now. All right. And then next, again, is forward thinking. And this is less of a mock-up to consider, but more illustrative of where we want to take our products. We just strongly believe that AI, as we call assistive intelligence, is really going to be helpful in the future and is quickly going to be embraced once that benefit is seen in a tangible manner. And so we're rethinking the way that we approach our quality and manufacturing and even our asset management tools. And this shows an example of how we might be rethinking a QMS system that would basically come in and tell you, right, that chief of staff approach there, hey, you know what, welcome, right? You just sat down at your desk, coffee in hand, and here are the things that I think you need to look at first. We've created potentially drafts for you, called attention to things that you might need to pay attention to. So for instance, you've got an audit coming up. We've created a binder for you to get ready for that. And you'll go through and check that, et cetera. So this is not meant to be a mock-up in the sense that we're showing you a product that's coming next, but certainly it helps, I think, to illustrate, and hopefully you'll agree that this will be very helpful coming up in the future. So you can look for MasterControl to look to help you in your roles with this type of agent technology.
And this is just such a brilliant encapsulation of that chief of staff mentality. You know, when you're a quality manager and you log out on Friday night, I have my routine of things I look at, of here's how many open CAPAs that we have at the current time. Here's where the training percentage on this different course is. And when I come back on Monday, I'm hoping that I remember what that number was. And so when I go and look at dashboards of here's the open CAPA count, or here's what the training percentage was, and here's what it is now, I don't really have that historical reference of here's the trend lines, here's what went up. Here, this is trending higher than it should be from based upon our predicted forecasts. Of really giving you that context to that new information and helping you drive that understanding, as opposed to just giving you the updated information that's relevant and contextually appropriate, but not giving you the history of what this is representing for you. So this might become my new favorite.
Well, things change so quickly, right? I guess your favorite will have to change too. Thank you.
All right. Um, with that, thank you so much for joining us. I will reach out to our webinar team. Nicole, what questions have come in that we can help answer?
Yes, thank you both. Such great information. Thanks for providing any of your real world examples as well. Always great to hear. We have had, excuse me, a number of questions come in, which is great. Thank you everyone who has submitted them. Excuse me. And I'm just reading through. Renee, I'm going to pass this first one over to you. Our organization wants to adopt AI and we're actively evaluating, but are concerned about security and compliance. How does Control ensure that your applications maintain data integrity and meet regulatory requirements in a GMP environment, GXP environment, I should say?
Sure. So I think one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that AI is just a technology. And so it falls under the umbrella of master control proper to comply with our strict data integrity and data security. We have a variety of ISO standards we comply with. All of that for data security is not different. AI is not exempt from any of that. And so what you have with master control is definitely something that AI respects equally. One of the things, though, is I think important as we're seeing different guidances, whether from industry, FDA, across Europe, Australia, et cetera, right? As people are beginning to think about this from a regulatory body's perspective. One of the things is knowing what's happening with that data and the transparency about what's happening there. And so I want to call out back to that agentic platform, which I kind of brushed over relative to things that are happening there from the data coming in through the application, a prompt being created by master control, routing to a particular agent, which is a program essentially that says, here's where I should send the data next so that I can get a task accomplished, to a large language model, and then out of that to post-processing. I want to camp for a second, just briefly on the LLM itself. There are vendors who have their wrappers around other LLMs, particularly ChatGPT and others. And that's certainly acceptable, but there is a bit of a black box there, which master control is not subject to, because master control owns the LLMs that we use. Every large language model that is used by master control, it belongs to master control. So there is no handoff to a third party there. And I think that's important, especially as we think about what's happening with data, to keep in mind. And then, of course, we're very active with FDA commentary and other industry. We're part of Bioforum, for example, setting standards for that handling.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. Our next question, Erin, this is a great one for you. As you kind of mentioned, folks being hesitant to even talk about using AI in their roles. And we have a question that came in. Many of my team members are concerned that AI might replace their jobs. How do you recommend we approach change management when introducing AI tools to our quality and manufacturing teams?
I think so much of thinking about AI as this net new, bizarre, functionality that's going to fully disrupt everything is unfamiliarity and how quickly things are changing. Fundamentally, like Renee was saying, this is a technology. This is a technology that is embedded into your core products. And so you manage it the same way that you do with all of your other change processes. What are the risks? What are the concerns that people are going to have? Who are your stakeholders as rolling out this new feature? And then really strongly looking at what are the guardrails for our organization that we need to consider for them. So, looking at how was this implemented? Where is the human in the loop? What are the use cases in which we're trying to use this for, and how does it apply to our own internal standards for risk management and change processes? And so you see a lot with change control and change management. It's the same function. It is truly just applying a new technology available to you. In the same way that you manage the change management of migrating to cloud 10 years ago, when that became the new scary technology, when people weren't comfortable moving to the cloud and having their information processed and housed in AWS servers. And Gartner had this incredible quote back then, that saying I think this is back in like 2021, that having a no cloud IT policy is going to be the same as having a no internet policy within 5 years. And I think that's true today. And I think you're going to see the exact same revolution with AI moving forward, is that having a no AI policy is going to be like having a no internet policy moving forward, as we see this quick iteration and rapid adoption across industry.
I love that parallel to cloud adoption for the industry. Thanks for kind of drawing that. Great. Let's see. We're gonna try to get to a few more questions here. Renee, so we're interested in exam generator for training effectiveness. Can you explain how the system ensures the questions it generates accurately test comprehension of things like critical procedure requirements rather than just surface level information?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for calling me out, first of all, because that's Erin's favorite thing, so I get to address it. So as essentially, here's something that we learned in beta. So originally we had thought that we would say, okay, give us a document, and then we'll spit out magically this exam for you. And there was not enough control from a user perspective. So the AI was unable to say this particular section is more important to this user or company, right, for training purposes than any other section. And so we flipped that on its head a little bit. And as you might remember from the video, where I introduced this idea that you had uploaded the document from which the exam should be created. And then you have gone through, and this was right where that video started, you had gone through to say, this particular section is important. We don't test on the appendices, for example, which you might be thinking, well, of course you don't test on the appendices, but we actually had beta customers who did test on that, right? So the control from a human perspective, even in guiding the AI to create that exam generation or draft generation, is part of that process where we can make sure that you're accurately testing comprehension based, that is, right, the exam questions that are being created are pertinent to what you think is important to test. And I'm glad to hear that companies are thinking about this, because right, more and more, this is a way to show auditors that you are making sure that your workforce is actually having comprehension about your procedures, as opposed to simply acknowledging that maybe they've just received and perhaps read. We did have a beta tester tell us too that their particular company monitors time spent on pages. And she said there's no way in the world that some of these people can read that quickly and comprehend and be able to say yes to read and understood. So I think by giving the control to that exam creator up front, the human part of it, right, the generated part by the computer, definitely helps make sure your training is applicable and compliant and useful for your purposes.
Yeah, I love that human in the loop example, and then also kind of acknowledging in this case how AI it can actually be helpful and beneficial to an audit. So great. We've got One final question we've got time for, and I'll pass this back to Erin. So, this kind of a future looking, where do you see AI technologies evolving for life sciences, specifically to quality and manufacturing? Are there emerging applications or regulatory developments that we should be preparing for now? And how is Master Control preparing for these future needs?
Okay, so Renee gets easy questions on the exam generator. Got it, got it. Um, no, it is incredible to see how quickly the regulatory bodies are moving to reply to the use of AI as part of the regulatory submissions process. We saw the first draft guidance come out on using AI as part of your quality processes in January of this year. Really under, excuse me, re we saw the first draft guidance come out of January of this year on AI usage as part of your quality and manufacturing operation systems, and really heavily focused on the same things that Master Control is, looking at human in the loop. What are the use cases? What are you using the AI for? What are the functions that you are trying to achieve with it? Who is there a human in the loop kind of helping you with that decision? And then how do you assess the risk of the types of decisions and the types of insights that the AI tooling is available to you? We just recently saw that the FDA commissioner announced that the first AI assisted scientific review of a regulatory submission pilot has completed. And so they did the pilot as part of CEDAR, and they're rolling it out to the rest of the agency by, I believe, June 30th. So a really aggressive time schedule of even regulatory bodies pulling in Gen AI to automate those smaller, repetitive tasks that the smart interns can do. We don't need to hire smart interns anymore, that if we're looking for efficiencies, even in the federal government, we can get that through these AI assisted reviews, much in the same way of how Master Control is thinking about it, is that how do we get those efficiencies and for those repetitive tasks where your very bright quality engineers, your very skilled quality analysts and manufacturing teams are focused on manufacturing product and delivering product and not spending significant, 4 to 6% of their time, I think we had on the slides, focusing on those deviations. And so how do we automate those repetitive, tedious tasks to allow you to take the higher level thinking and the critical thinking that needs to come to these sorts of insights as part of this. So we are excited to see how the FDA rolls out additional AI empowered tooling and assisting reviews. And because we can only see more value for customers in doing that. The faster that you get through your regulatory submissions process, which is a very fraught, emotional process, the faster that you're able to move on to the next product and move into the commercial arm of your product lifecycle.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for pulling in that FDA example. And thank you both, Erin and Renee, for bringing your perspective, your expertise to share with our webinar attendees today. So if we want to go to the next slide, that is all the time we had for questions. Thank you for those. Here on the page, if you want to scan this QR code and learn more about even more detail about Renee and what Erin were speaking to around Master Control's approach to responsible assistive AI, please scan this code. It'll take you to a dedicated page on our website to learn more about our approach to AI and tools that Master Control is building and offering to customers. So I encourage you to spend more time there and feel free to reach out to us with any follow-ups or questions. And with that, that wraps us for this session. So thank you for your time. More to come on AI as it, rapidly evolves, especially within the life sciences. So onward.